This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/Tales from the Front Desk. Our story of today is, Bridezilla and her extended family destroy 70 hotel rooms. Who else loves Bridezilla stories? Because boy do I have one. Buckle up because it's a long one. It includes drunken adults and minors, shoplifting, the end of at least 2 relationships, a very long visit from your friendly neighborhood police officers, a few evictions, and a beep ton of overtime for my employees. It was like we were the host of a live version of the Jerry Springer show last night. Needless to say, there's gonna be an employee appreciation party very soon since none of them walked out on me with all the crazy stuff that happened. I'm an FOM at a hotel that has 132 rooms, and the wedding party that stayed with us last night had rented out 70 of them. But that's not all. We also had not 1, but 2 school sports teams in-house, renting a combined total of 30 rooms. Needless to say, our hotel was very well bursting at the seams. Especially since each group wanted to be as far away from the other as possible, and we had to pack regular travelers between them all. Haha, party hardy, am I right? Hindsight is 20/20, and we should have realized we were in for a beep storm 2 days ago. Bridezilla, her groom King Kong, and the wedding party of monsters all checked in then. The men checked into one of our largest suites for a bachelor party while the women checked into another for their bachelorette party. We fully expected the men to cause a riot because they were hauling in beer literally by the keg. In reality, Bridezilla and her Bridezilla maids were the ones that went on a rampage. Not only did they tally up a total of 3 noise complaints, the 4th one gets you evicted, and over $100 worth of pantry charges, but they actually paid a group of kids $20 each to run up and down the hallways. I can only suspect it was because they meant to use the kids as a distraction from their own roughhousing. The employee on duty that night said a guest came down to report that they thought the room was being used to film a Girls Gone Wild video. But the sun eventually set, and I came in to work my morning shift the next day. I stupidly didn't see all the red flags sailing right in front of my face. Less than 15 minutes into my shift, Bridezilla's maid of honor comes down. She sees that I'm standing behind the desk and wearing a name tag, so she rightfully treats me like I'm not a human being. Because as we all know, people that work in customer service are just robots in cheap flesh suits, beep boop. She chews me out a little bit for my employee's despicable behavior last night towards herself and her best friends. I run through my programming and run apologize template 012 and say we're sorry to have made her feel disrespected and insulted, but inform her that her room had multiple noise complaints against it. We're very strict on our noise policy, ma'am, I told her. You aren't the only guests in the hotel, and if you cannot be courteous to our other guests, we will kindly ask that you seek other accommodations. Bridezilla's maid of honor didn't like that. She said, well, it's just my opinion, but as someone who's a part of a wedding that brought your hotel more than 60 rooms worth of business, I think you guys should be a little more lenient with the rules for us. Unfortunately, my SAS module was not installed at the time due to a lack of sleep. So instead of going Minnesota nice on her, I told her, we're trying to provide a consistent experience to all guests. I know you guys are throwing a party and it's a happy time for many of you, but we cannot bend on our noise policy. After that exchange, she has a list of people arriving today that she wants me to assign to specific rooms, because I have to make sure certain people aren't rooming too close together. Some of them have cheated on the other ones, but they promise to behave themselves if they don't have to look at each other. Now I may just be a simple robot that cannot consume liquid beverages, but in my opinion, I don't believe X's and alcohol mix well. Maid of honor also asked for housekeeping to come up ASAP to clean their trashed room, because they're going to use it as a prep room for the wedding. The housekeeping executive doesn't even show up for another hour, and I refuse to leave the desk to spend time cleaning their room. I told her she'd have to wait a bit before someone came in, to which she again offered her opinion and said I really think a hotel this big should have someone always on duty for stuff like this. By now it's 9 a.m., basically dawn of the second day. And would you believe it, people for the wedding are already showing up to check in. It's wonderful that all these people are so punctual that they're an entire 6 hours early, just so they aren't late. Graciously, we were not full the previous night, so I allowed them all to check into rooms as they showed up. But you wanna know what I honestly thought? They all looked like clones of that woman from the That Is My Opinion gif that I keep referencing, and I did not want to test how well my eardrums could stand up to a whole choir of sirens. The small highlight to the busy morning is that there was a professional that came in and did the hair for all the kids involved in the wedding party. She did up flowers in all the girls' hair. They all looked beeping adorable running through the breakfast area and were so excited to show off their new dresses to anyone that walked past them. I hope Bridezilla doesn't influence those kids' behavior too much. The rest of the morning passes by in a flash. I'd done at least 40 of the 75 arrivals we had for the day. The PM shift arrives and I catch her up to speed and offer to stay late with her. I expected it to be just as crazy until the wedding starts at 5. She declines and says she'll be fine. A response which she tells me she regretted in a text message later that night. At 5 o'clock she had a line of people out the door, all of them are a part of the wedding group and screaming at her because they're now late for the wedding. More than 5 women were demanding she give them keys so they could change in the rooms without having them bother with trivial things like payment or signatures. She was a trooper and stood her ground, asking all of them to wait their turn to check in. My houseman on duty even offered to help her if she signed into the second computer for him, but that small ray of hope was quickly squashed. A mother on 3rd floor called down to inform us that her son had swallowed a large quantity of pool water. The pool water upset his stomach, and he ended up vomiting all over the elevator and 3rd floor. The very same floor that the wedding party was pre-assigned and checking into. So he had to go deal with that. Once that rush was over with, all was quiet for a few peaceful hours. Then, it was time for the shuttle to pick them up. Weddings usually all follow the same pattern. They ask for shuttle service from 8 p.m. until 1 a.m. Happy to pay our outlandish fee for private use of the shuttle. Then, no one bothers to use it until 11 p.m., at which point the alcohol makes them view the shuttle as a clown car and they all believe they've joined the circus. Tonight followed the same pattern with only one exception. At 8:30 the driver had a single woman ride it back to the hotel, sobbing her eyes out. She told him that she saw her fiancé making out with her cousin behind the reception hall and couldn't believe it. He tries to offer her comforting words on the way back, but I'm told it was an all-around awkward 15-minute ride. When she gets back to the hotel she demanded of the desk that we take her card off file and make her ex-fiancé pay. Except we don't, because we need him to come down and slide his card. The chances of that happening were slim to none. So, as my shuttle driver was busy acting as the Ronald McDonald clown bus, stuffing close to triple the legal capacity into it, since not a single one of them bothered listening to him, I'm sure you all have one burning question on mind. What about those sports teams? Have they caused any problems? Can you guess the answer? If you guessed yes, then you're right. One of the 2 teams had rented out a conference room to have a pizza party in. They were informed several times they only had the room from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. And, after the children stuffed themselves full of pizza, they ran off to use the swimming pool. And as I'm sure you're all aware, global law states that if you're at a hotel for your kid's sports event, you are legally allowed to get completely wasted. And I mean absolutely beat-faced. At that point the hotel staff is supposed to babysit your gremlins so you can party like you're 21 again. Isn't that swell? So our houseman is trying to get the kids to behave themselves and stay quiet in the pool while the front desk is threatening to evict the parents. Because it's now 10:30 and Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus is being blasted from the conference room and can be heard throughout every inch of the hotel. Meanwhile, the one, singular mother that was being responsible stopped by the desk with about 20 bottles of Diet Coke and her son. Apparently our vending machine is broken on the 2nd floor. She said that her son put in the money, and then proceeded to press the button 100 times while waiting for his soda. And he must the strategy guide for that vending machine downloaded to his phone, because he knew just the right amount of times to push the button so that the machine would continue spitting out pops. The son did it about 2 more times before the mother realized you couldn't buy 20 pops with only $5 and forced him to bring them all back down to the desk and apologize for stealing them. The other parents back in the conference room had been waving off the front desk's threats, until we finally get a lucky break. The night audit came in a half hour early because the weather was bad and she didn't want to be late. My night auditor has plenty of years under her belt and has seen far worse. She called the police within seconds of walking in and informed the sports parents that she was doing so. When police arrived, the parents had all belligerently returned to their rooms and my PM desk shift was able to go home after that stressful day of work. But that's when the real fun starts. The officers got called away only a few minutes after arriving, but we know exactly where they went after that. They actually got called to the reception hall where the wedding was being held. Apparently they needed to shut down the bar because the parents were buying drinks for the kids who were 18 to 20. Plus, one of the kids that was drinking became heavily intoxicated, stole the keys to his mother's car from her purse, and crashed it into another car in the parking lot. The kid was fine, but probably suffered a wicked hangover this morning. The reception hall had called the police to kick them all out, and that's when they became our problem again. See, the driver, who should have still had pickups at 12, 12:30, and 1, now had to pick them all up at 12. There was at least 35 people cramming into the bus, each of which was holding a beer glass with at least half a pint of beer in it. He put his foot down then, turned off the shuttle and told them they weren't allowed to have open alcoholic beverages while in a vehicle and would not drive them back until they all disposed of them. Needless to say, it didn't go over well. None of them listened to him and just berated him to bring them back because it was cold. One of the officers on site came over and told the driver that they'd be willing to escort him back and would overlook the many passengers and their open alcohol, just so they could get these people inside. So when the shuttle and the police entourage showed up at the hotel a half-hour later, it was like unleashing Pandora's box upon the building. 4 officers even stayed around to help the night audit deal with all the drunk and disorderly, because there were a lot of complaints. The first thing that happened was that someone was complaining about a room on first floor. Someone was attempting to do an amateur remake of 50 Shades of Grey and were not being subtle about it. Then there was screaming and yelling and the breaking of lamps. Remember that cousin that broke up someone's relationship earlier? Well, she apparently had a fiancé of her own. And while she was doing the nasty with another man, her drunken fiancé walked in on them. It didn't end well, and we had to evict all 3 of them. Meanwhile, on third floor, Girls Gone Wild had resumed in full force. The night audit went up with one of the officers to tell the group that this was their final warning before they were evicted from the hotel as well. While she was doing so, a man in the room across the hall opened his door to yell at the night audit. His exact words were, "Why are you dragging me out of bed? Do something about this damn noise." Before the officer, that I presume the old man didn't see, could say anything, the night audit spun on him and said, "You got out of your bed of your own volition, sir. We're dealing with the situation. It's all the same song and dance for the next few hours. People call to complain, the audit and officers deal with it, and eventually everyone slips into sleep." Please read, slips into sleep, as, became blackout drunk and passed out. Apparently the officers were having a slow night and 2 of them stayed until the night audit was done since she didn't feel safe on her own. My houseman stayed until 3 a.m. to help the night audit with moral support in cleaning the hallways, because they were trashed with a capital T. We don't know what 310 was doing in their room at 4 in the morning, but 210 swears all the way to Sunday that they were practicing an Irish gig. And falling. There was a lot of falling. But the crazy thing is, when the audit got up to the room, the entire floor was silent. Towards the end of the evening, a man comes down to our pantry, takes an armful of random items and starts walking away. He's clearly drunk because the officers watched him bewilderingly, and the night audit calls out, asking if the man would like to charge his items to his room. Said man must have actually been 3 deer in a trench coat, because he sprinted off the second she asked. An officer caught him, but he was so drunk that our night audit took pity and said that we wouldn't press charges and asked to just escort him back to the room. And now today, I come in at 7 a.m. and am caught up to speed. I'll tell you, seeing a cop standing around at the front desk does not do my heart any good. If I have to come in and see a cop, I fully expect them to be there because some got murdered. The morning was quiet, too quiet. And then, I hear it. The drunken heavy stomps down the staircase, the screaming agony of a stomach demanding food above alcohol, and Bridezilla descends into the lobby with a hunger. A hunger that can only be satiated by screaming at the FOM. So I take it, listening to her scream, and demand that everyone in her party be refunded. All 70 rooms. She can't believe that we had the audacity to call the cops on her friends and family. It's a wedding, she shouts over and over. We're supposed to have fun. Not be treated like a bunch of dogs. I really didn't want to deal with her bullshit, so I told her. Ma'am, you must keep it down. Or else I will have to call the cops back. Our employees were verbally threatened by some of your guests last night and did not feel safe. I wanted to say that if they didn't want to be treated like dogs, they shouldn't act like dogs then. But I felt that may be a little too unprofessional and couldn't override my own programming. So the wedding party began to check out. But not before they trashed breakfast. There was food dropped, coffee spilled, and my 2 breakfast attendants swear it was done on purpose. When they were cleaning up some spilled coffee, a bridesmaid knocked over another cup of coffee, and they all snickered at them. What is this, Mean Girls 2? And that is my tale of Bridezilla. I've already gotten 2 emails from our guest relations department saying that there have been complaints opened up against us about employee behavior last night. But they're both from members of the wedding party, so all I have to do is submit a copy of the police report and I think we'll be good. I pray that all of you will never have to deal with Bridezillas of your own. And if you do, Godspeed and good luck. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.